But yeah, but one of the things that I thought was really, that I really liked about the movie was the fact that you really get a sense of realism like almost no other film has. And one of the things that they do that's kind of subtle about that is not just making these normal blue collar working class people, but also the fact that it's kind of a hellish feeling inside the spaceship even before we see the alien. There's this kind of claustrophobic workspace where you're working with a lot of people you don't like, but you have to get along with. And a lot of people can relate to that. It gives you that realistic feeling, where you just hear the type of normal banter that you hear, like in the morning, when you're working with your coworkers, where the guy says, "I feel dead," and the other guy comments, "Did anyone ever tell you look dead?" That was one of my favorite scenes in the movie because it's really good foreshadowing. And I love that element of it, how they foreshadow things that happen like that. Like the whole idea of Cain, being the first one to get it, because it's like a biblical reference. Cain in the Bible, first one to die. So who do you think gets it first in Alien? Cain, of course. I mean, I like stuff, I like stuff like that, and I think it does work as a story. They're coming out with a prequel now to that, and they have Ripley Scott directing it. To me, the first Alien film, and a lot of people don't know this, but Alien was an allegory to global warming. I don't know if you ever, and it has references to global warming in that. I don't know, Josh, if you ever picked that up.
I haven't heard about that.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is there's a scene in there where she calls for Antarctica control, trying to communicate with Earth. Well, why are they on Antarctica? Why is their controllers on Antarctica? Because they've had to abandon most of the rest of the planet. It's a subtle thing, but it's in there. You see what I'm saying? But that was one of the elements, of this hellish society that they're living in, where things have really just gone amok, where things have really gotten quite bad. And there are other clues to that when you see how tough these characters really are. Like the scene when Brett is called a parrot by Ripley. And instead of, getting really that upset about it, his life's been so hard, it's just toughened him up. He's like, she calls him a parrot. You say right, says, "Do you know that, Brett?" He just smiles and says, "Right." It's like, hey, every horrible thing I've been through so far, this is nothing. You see what I'm saying? These people are tough. Their lives are hard, and it has toughened them up. And it's a subtle thing in there, but it's in there for those who, are observant enough to really pick that up. I mean, but to me, the thing that really works about Alien is the fact that AFI listed it as the best horror film of all time. But if you think about it, it won a Hugo, actually, for Best Dramatic Presentation. But winning the AFI award for Best Horror Film of all time, hey, I hate this, what can I say? It makes that Hugo Award look pretty small, by comparison, And to me, Alien's one of the movies closest to my own heart. It's one of my very favorite films. But to me, that the movie does really well is that it instead of just creating fear in the audience, it creates that sense of panic, like few other films have ever done. And the panic, to me, really starts in that movie when the captain, played by Tom Skerritt, goes into the air vent to kill the alien. And when you first saw that, did you think that Skerritt was going to kill the alien and be successful?
I at least thought he was going to survive, almost to the end, if not be the final character still standing.
Or one of the final ones, yeah. Well, you have to understand, The Thing from Another World, all those movies, up to that time, the captain, the military man, he always saves the day in the movie. Every single time. And when he ends up the next victim from the alien, the audiences of the day were just shocked. They were like, oh my God, they're screwed. That was basically, as one person said in their review of watching the movie Alien, when Tom Skerritt, they said, hey, wait a minute, how many of these people are left? Oh my God, is anyone going to even make it? Like, wait a minute. And it's interesting because I actually got to talk to Cameron about the film. And he said he absolutely believed that Tom Skerritt was going to kill the alien in that scene. And when it didn't happen, he was like, wow. Wait a minute, where is this going? Like, and then it's a woman who's the sole survivor at the end. He's like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming at all. But he's one of the, how should I say, the forefront people in the whole sci-fi movie movement. And for him to say, hey, look, I was blown away and it was unpredictable and it worked. What huger compliment can you get, really? But I mean, to me, the whole idea of when, one of the characters I really liked was Lambert's character. And, that whole scene when Tom Skerritt's dead and they're trying to figure out what to do and no one seems to have an idea, a clue at the moment, It's like, and you really see that sense of panic setting in of all these characters, particularly Lambert, played by Veronica Cartwright. And by the way, just so you know, that part was written for her in the film. Also, Yaphet Kotto was written for Parker, and Harry Dean Stanton was written for Brett, and and Tom Skerritt was written for. Captain Dallas was written for Tom Skerritt. Clint Eastwood almost ended up getting that part, actually, but the project fell apart because Eastwood wanted to direct the film, and he hadn't directed anything yet, so they canned the whole project. But I'm kind of glad it worked out the way it did because they got the original cast that they wanted to begin with. Yeah, Skerritt, all of them who read it, they all said they wanted to do the movie. They said they were excited to do it. But it was funny, in fact, his comment on it, he said, I got 4 more lines of dialogue than anyone else in the movie. And he had to have counted everyone else's dialogue in his own. Who figured that out, He's like, he was just blown away. He said, you didn't tell me I was going to have such a big part. He's like, wow, this is way better than what I even hoped for. He says, yeah, you want me to play a bad guy? I played bad guys before. And they explained to him, no, we want the audience to think you're a bad guy, but you're not really the bad guy. Ash is. You're actually just someone who's kind of annoying, but you're not truly evil. And there's a big difference between the two. And your character dies heroically at the end. In fact, he dies more heroically than anyone else in the entire story. So you're actually one of the heroes of the story, but we want you to play it like you're the bad guy. We want the audience to think that. And he's like, yeah, you're right. My character, is a hero. He does gain redemption at the end. He's like, yeah, this is a better part than what I originally was thinking. Yeah, he absolutely wanted to do the part. But one of the things I liked about the movie was the fact how they personalized, the spaceship with like little pictures everywhere, even of nudie women, and how people like Parker would have like a blue headband tied around their head, no explanation, it's just there. And Brett was wearing like a Hawaiian shirt, because he liked to relax in that, But, this flushes them out into real people. You see what I'm saying? And it was a nice touch where it keeps heightening that sense of realism. But the thing to me, what that heightened the greatest sense of realism for me was actually the scene with the cat, where Brett is going to get the cat, Jonesy, and the cat sees the alien behind him and hisses. And to me, it's like that at that moment, I felt that wasn't a guy in a costume. You see what I'm saying? That was the alien. This was some dangerous, scary creature behind you. Because the cat recognizes it as dangerous, and we go off responses of our animals around us for signs of danger. That's instinctive in us. You see what I'm saying? And to me, that really heightened that scene and made it real. And let me tell you how they did that, actually. They took a dog, a big dog, and they had a cover for the dog, and they had it in a cage, and they trained the cat to walk forward, and at the cue they would pull the cover from the cage where the dog was in, and the cat saw it and went whoosh, scene to get it to hiss on cue. That was the stuff they did to make it work, and it's like genius, but it worked. And to me it's like, how rare do you see a film that just everything just comes together right? And you watch it and you go, man, I don't want to change one single thing in this film. It's like, and I can watch it every day and I get bored with it. It's like, how many movies can you say that about? Aliens, one of the few, I mean, that